Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks to the Zcash Foundation for putting on a really great conference. Woo! All right, so the way we see it, the way we see Zcash is that our mission is to empower everyone in the world with economic freedom. And that comes with a bunch of things like, why am I wearing this? That comes with, can you hear me now? Freedom is connected to a bunch of things like privacy, but not only that, also dignity and consent. But it means different things to different people. And when we launch Zcash, before we launch Zcash, this is a screenshot from the frequently asked questions wiki page back then, just before it launched. And the question was, is Zcash going to be proof of stake or proof of work? And right then we said, we're going to kick it off with proof of work because that's the battle-tested thing, but the community can always change it. And we don't know how they will, but we support evolution and innovation. And since then, humans have learned a lot about this technology, and we've learned a lot. And we're increasingly convinced that proof of stake is way, way better for our mission of economic freedom for a lot of reasons. So much better that we think it's the most important thing at ECC for us to focus on delivering next in order to do better at delivering privacy and equitability and usability and everything to people. Oh, and by the way, I haven't timed this talk, so I'll probably end early, so you should be typing lots of questions into Discord right now. Okay, real quick, what are we even talking about? So proof of stake is simply that stakers acting through validators get to validate transactions and build the next version of the ledger, and then they get rewarded for doing so. And if they were to misbehave, like try to cheat people or refuse service or anything, then they would get penalized for that. And proof of work, which is the original granddaddy technology, is that a bunch of computers around the world race each other to solve a problem, a math problem, whichever one solves it first gets to build the next version of the ledger and get rewarded. So they're not very different. So we previously posted a blog post where we named 7 different reasons why we think proof of stake is better. And I'm going to summarize the 7 in one sentence each and then spend the rest of the talk diving in on some of the economic aspects of it. So, well, sustainability, this is what I'm going to dive in on later, so I'll skip it this time. This one is kind of nuanced in my mind. The way I like to think of it is, here's a way we cannot be part of a global argument about climate and whether proof of work mining is good or bad for climate and so on and so forth. So my answer is, let's not try to win that argument. There's a lot of really interesting technical reasons that I don't have time to get into to think that proof of stake provides better security and better performance and better usability at lower cost. Oh, this one's interesting. In the early days, like one of the ways that Bitcoin got a grassroots takeoff was that anyone could mine Bitcoin, right? And that transitioned as it became sufficiently profitable and sufficiently big business, then that's no longer the case. Does anyone here currently mine Bitcoin? Does anyone here currently mine Zcash? Okay, well, I'm really grateful to all those people that do. I saw there's at least somebody here who currently mines Zcash. That's a really important part of the network, and it's a really important service, but it's just not accessible to almost everyone. And this is a super specialized audience, right? And much less everyone else in the world. But with proof of stake, more or less everyone can participate and can become like a staker, which is kind of the equivalent of a miner. So it's a huge user base that can become more actively engaged. This one's also really complicated, and there's probably a lot of people here who know more about it than I do, but it seems like proof of stake can do a bunch of things that are increasingly in demand, like cross-chain finality and maybe all kinds of programmability and DeFi and all kinds of stuff. That's complicated. Let's skip it. Oh, proof of stake provides a very natural way for people who are staking to attach their preferences or opinions anonymously to their stake. And that's not the same. There's a widespread misunderstanding that proof of stake means plutocracy and that the stakers or the biggest stakers or whatever get control over everyone else and over the protocol. There are a few protocols that have tried that, I think, but it's really just not the same. Being able to raise your voice and be heard is not the same as having control over everyone else. And last one, so sustainability eliminates downward pressure on price of ZEC, and this last one, more decentralization, are the two that I'm going to spend the rest of the talk on. So having gone around and talked in various venues, online and offline, for a while now about this, I often hear this concern or misunderstanding from a lot of people that they think proof of work is like decentralized and is for the people, and proof of stake is for the rich. And I think that's totally wrong, but I can understand why people think that. So there's a simple feedback loop. And I'm an engineer, so I'm always looking for trade-offs and feedback loops. That's my bread and butter, steak and butter. So there's this obvious feedback loop in proof of stake because if a staker has some coins and they use them to support the network and they get rewarded in coins, more coins, for having done that, then obviously they can just do it again with more this time around. And so since there's an obvious feedback loop, it makes sense that people would worry that this is like a runaway feedback loop where the rich get richer. And it's definitely a risk. There's definitely truth to this. But what people don't seem to remember is that money can buy computers. So the same kinds of feedback loops exist in proof of work. And in fact, I'm going to argue that they're much worse in proof of work. So in proof of work, if you're a miner and you earn rewards, you can either cash out and use it as an income stream for yourself, or you can reinvest in mining more. And if you do that, you've got to do two things. You've got to get rid of the coins you acquired, and you've got to buy more computers. And space, like factories and real estate and power and so forth. So in both cases, there's a feedback loop. And that should be obvious to everyone once they remember that money can buy computers and space and everything else. And so what's the difference? There are two extra arrows here marked in red, and they correspond to my two arguments from this slide. One of these arrows, I'm going to argue, says that proof of work mining pushes down the price of ZEC. And the other arrow, I'm going to argue, says that proof of work mining leads to centralization. So the first one is, if you're a proof of work miner and you want to reinvest in your business, you have to sell the coins that you just earned. And it doesn't matter if you can get your power company to take payment in Zec, that would be awesome. But either way, your act of buying more power is going to increase demand for electricity and increase supply of Zec on the market, right? In exactly equal proportion to each other. Electricity and real estate and personnel and new ASIC miners and so on. And that's it. That's the whole argument, which seems super simple, but it took years and Dan Robinson from Paradigm coming along and telling me that in a sentence for me to realize, oh yeah, that really makes sense. Type in questions if you disagree into Discord. And the other arrow is somewhat more nuanced, and it also took me years to settle on this. If you are setting up a business to do proof-of-work mining, there are very strong economies of scale, like in most things, but also in proof-of-work mining. There are very strong economies of scale, which means if you have like $10,000 that you're willing to invest in your new proof-of-work mining business, then that limits like the size of the space and the power and cooling and whatever operational costs you can prepare to spend. And if you have 1,000 times that much, if you have $10 million to invest in your new proof-of-work mining business, you're going to get, you put in more than $1,000, you put in more than 1,000 times as much. So, I'm going to take a deep breath. If you put in 1,000 times as much money into a proof-of-work mining business, you're going to get more than 1,000 times the capacity than the smaller guy did. Make sense? And that's what we call in economics an economy of scale. When compared to proof of stake, there's almost no economy of scale in proof of stake. There's one subtlety, which is the difference between stakers and validators, right? And I said on that slide that the way proof of stake works is that stakers are risking and investing their money through validators to do this job. And so if you're one of the validators, I think you'll get better return than if you're not. So there's one little sort of divergence between stakers and validators. But on the whole, if someone has $10,000 that they want to put to invest into proof of stake, and someone else has $10 million that they want to invest into proof of stake, the bigger one is putting in 1,000 times as much money, and they're going to get about 1,000 times as much reward. It's pretty much equal, I think. And economies of scale, I think, feel free to argue with me in Discord or afterward or whatever, but I think this is the most powerful pressure for centralization. Anything with a strong economy of scale, I said money can buy computers, money can buy electricity, money can buy most things, right? So anytime the bigger player gets a better deal than the smaller player, then there's that feedback loop. And I think with an economy of scale, that feedback loop is much stronger and drives out the smaller players. So if this works, switching to proof of stake should have many positive effects for Zcash users and for the Zcash mission of empowering everyone worldwide. But in particular, at the economic level, it should have 2 or 3 really positive effects, which is a much larger population of people can benefit from it. And the value of ZEC should be more likely to go up and less likely to go down. So it should be worth more over the long haul, probably. And the distribution of newly issued ZEC should be more even between larger players and smaller players, which is the opposite of that narrative that I've been hearing. So, like we said in that slide at the very beginning, like we said on that wiki page 6 years ago now, this decision, like any big decision about the whole Zcash community and the whole ecosystem, is not up to us. It's up to the Zcash community as a whole. By us there, I meant ECC. ECC just writes software. We can't force other people to download it and run it. And people who run software, like full nodes and miners, they just run software. They can't force other people to use it or to connect to it or to rely on it. So in the long run, what's really going to determine how Zcash evolves is that broad population of users that are willing to rely on a thing for their economic value and their economic decisions. And I hope you either agree and found this interesting or you disagree, and I get to hear why, about why those users, like all users, in the long run, should value and rely on a proof-of-stake version of Zcash more than they already do on a proof-of-work version of Zcash. OK, those are all my slides. And I hope you've typed in a lot of questions because we have extra time. We have 3 extra minutes for extra questions.
Quite a few questions. So let's start with, does the ECC have an idea of which specific proof-of-stake schemes would best fit the Zcash philosophy and community and what those might be?
That's a good question. The answer is, I have my biases, but I'm not the decision maker within ECC on that. And certainly, ECC is not the decision maker within Zcash as a whole on that. I like Cosmos for a very simple reason, which is that it's the oldest, well-proven, battle-tested one. And that's the same reason why we chose Nakamoto proof-of-work consensus in 2016, because it was the oldest battle-tested one at the time. But there's a lot of technological nuance and product nuance that goes into that, which I'm not even the expert on. I think we're going to have a deep dive into the technology of proof-of-stake like right after this. Or sometime this afternoon.
Right after this.
Sweet.
So how would you quantify the cost of proof of stake, like the deadweight cost of all of the locked up coins?
The cost of proof of stake, like the deadweight cost of all of the locked up coins. I don't know. That's like me. We should get an. Is there an economist in the house? For me, I don't think of locked up coins as a cost. So for people who don't know, in a typical proof-of-stake system, you have to lock your coins. So you forego the option of using them, removing them for a certain time period, like 21 days or whatever, so that if your coins get used in a way that's abusive to the users, then your coins can be penalized before you get a chance to take them back. I don't know how to quantify or even think about that, honestly.
How important is the Ethereum proof-of-stake transition in seeing a major blockchain transition from POW to POS?
Oh, super important. Yeah, I was just noticing a tweet that I posted like 5 years ago or something, where Vitalik Buterin from Ethereum said, "You guys should move Zcash to proof-of-stake." And I replied, "I'm waiting to see Ethereum try it first and see what goes wrong." And now it's been like so many years later, and we're about to finally see what goes wrong. So yeah, I'm really excited about them going first after they've been working on it for basically as long as we've known them, which is basically since before Ethereum was even launched. And I feel I'm going to feel a lot better. I'm going to feel like it's much de-risked by finding out what's the worst that can happen from what they do.
Follow-up question to that, which I think you kind of answered, but maybe you'd like to say more about it. How much has ECC looked into Ethereum's transition?
I haven't very much. I just watched some news headlines, but it's not my job. Maybe you can ask Nathan when he gives his presentation about technical details.
Great. Do you consider liquid staking to be the future of proof of stake?
I don't even know what that is. I've heard of it. I think Nathan's mentioned it to me, so ask someone else.
Okay.
Liquid staking.
That's all the questions we have for right this second. And we could take a few audience questions if there are any burning questions in the audience right now. Raise your hand.
There's hands over here.
Oh, microphone's heading over there right now.
Okay, all right. So I just wanted to raise this. In talking to a few people that I respect that are vehemently anti-POS, they've raised the notion that while the initial capture of emissions may be more decentralized in POS, that there are forces pushing a broader distribution of tokens in proof of work that are absent or reversed in POS. In particular, the argument that the forced selling of proof of work miners to pay bills results in a broader distribution of coins, whereas proof of stake might in a way incentivize hoarding, potentially decreasing overall liquidity and making it more difficult for new entrants to purchase a token. So I'm just curious to hear your take on that and if you have an answer to this particular objection or concern.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, I don't know if there is one. Like, I don't know that you can necessarily say one way or the other, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Did everyone understand the question? Yeah. Yeah, there's something to that because there's something to the idea that proof of work distributes the coins more widely. Like if you create a brand new proof of stake network and at like the very first block, the founder of that network owns 100% of the coins, then there's sort of a bootstrapping problem. They have a monopoly on those coins at that moment, right? And then that thing I said about if you're a proof of work miner, then you've got to sell or spend your coins in order to reinvest. Well, that means they have to go somewhere else. Now, if they're all going to one investor, like he's the only person who buys the coins, then it's actually not getting any more distributed. But I would imagine in practice, it often does get more distributed. So my overall answer is, this is a really great thing about Zcash beginning life as proof of work, so that the original founders had only a very limited visibility or control over the distribution. And now I strongly suspect Zcash is one of the most widely distributed. It's definitely, it's one of the oldest coins. And I, for one, have extremely limited visibility into who owns Zcash coins now. I'm constantly surprised by people coming up to me and telling me that they're Zcashers from all different continents and cities and everything. So I think we've successfully avoided that initial monopoly problem by having proof of work distribution for the first many years.
So another question from Discord. Is proof of stake going to speed up transactions versus proof of work or make Zcash faster in any other way?
I think so. Stay tuned for Nathan's talk. I don't know. I'm giving him a lot of questions to answer, a lot of content. But yeah, proof of stake network should be faster.
What's there?
What's a realistic timeline to achieve POS for Zcash?
What's a realistic timeline to achieve POS for Zcash? That's definitely a question for Nathan. Okay, let me mention that Ethereum has been working on making this transition. I don't know if any other networks have ever made the transition from proof of work to proof of stake, any large-scale networks with lots of users. Ethereum has been working on this since we met them, which was before they launched like 7 years ago or whatever. And they haven't finished it yet, but they look like they're getting close. So I guess my goal is to go faster than Ethereum did by emulating them.
Hi, Zooko. So my question is, this might be one to pass to Nathan, But one of the problems we've been having on Ethereum when it comes to staking is there's such competition between staking pools that they are given, you kind of mentioned there'd be other applications that stakers can do besides mining. There are these things called derivatives where if I'm a staking pool, I can say, hey, you stake with me and I give you a shiny bonus token. And then you trade with that token outside of the staking locked-in ecosystem. So that's kind of relating to what the previous question asker was saying.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a bad thing or a good thing off the top?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we have seen that a lot with Ethereum now. And sorry to do this, but I know Nate has been thinking about that quite a lot. I don't know, it feels instinctively bad because derivatives feel more fragile or unpredictable and more centralizing. So it seems bad, but on the other hand, derivatives exist or can exist in everything. So we have to figure out how to live with them and get good service for the Zcash users out of it one way or another.
So moving to proof of stake is potentially a chance to change the issuance schedule.
I didn't hear you.
Moving to proof of stake is potentially a chance to change the issuance schedule.
Oh.
What do you think about doing that in general? And do you think that issuance should decrease to reduce downward price pressure?
Did you say moving to proof of stake potentially requires changing the issuance schedule?
Is it potentially an opportunity to change the...
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. And this is something else that Nate's been thinking a lot about. Maybe we just should have given him an hour and a half instead of me talking. But I don't know if y'all saw it, but Nate just posted a proposal called the Posterity Fund, which is instead of... So what we see most or all other proof of stake networks do so far is that you have issuance, and issuance can vary, unlike with Bitcoin and Zcash, where issuance is the future issuance schedule is locked in. So in these other proof of stake networks, we say a varying rate of issuance, and then a varying rate of burn or destruction of coins. And ECC, thanks to Nate's research, has just proposed an alternative, which is called the Posterity Fund, which is that there's a pool of coins which are available for the protocol to use in the future. And then there's the other pool, which is all of the coins that are in circulation. And instead of issuing more at a complicated rate and burning some, you transfer from the Posterity Fund, that's the pool of all possible future coins, the Posterity Fund, you transfer them into circulation, or you deposit them back out of circulation back into the Posterity Fund. And that's almost the same thing mathematically, but I think it makes it two things. It makes it clear that the 21 million cap can remain intact despite the transfers back and forth. And it makes there be like an interface or a way that different protocol features can move funds from circulation into the Posterity Fund in order to fuel the long-term maintenance. So to answer Dara's question, yes, I think it is an opportunity to change the issuance schedule. What we've now proposed as of a couple days ago is a sort of agreement socially and in consensus rules to constrain changes to the issuance schedule so that everyone can continue to count on the 21 million cap long term.
Yeah. Should the circulating supply issuance be reduced in order to decrease the downward fiat price pressure?
In order to reduce the what?
The downward pressure on the fiat price.
I don't know. It seems like above my pay grade. My instinctive answer, speaking for myself, is Zcash as a community should communicate to the world that we don't make changes for short-term or selfish reasons. but we do make changes pragmatically because we have to for the betterment of the user experience and the distribution and so forth. Okay? So I wouldn't say categorically I would oppose any such changes if they seemed really necessary for a good reason. But I'm averse to them because it raises questions. It seems like complicated. Great. There's a question over there.
Yeah, we can take a quick question from Cody. Microphone's coming, and then we can wrap up.
Thanks for taking the question. With proof of work, we have a way of roughly counting how many miners exist in the world based off of the difficulty and the block time. So we can estimate how many systems are out there that could be mining. With proof of stake, how would we be able to validate that someone didn't have 90% of the validators that was making all of the blocks?
That's a good question. My instinctive answer is in both cases, like everything that goes on over the internet, you can't tell the difference between one rich organization that has like a giant farm and then portrays itself to the public as multiple independent organizations versus multiple independent organizations. You just can't tell over a network. So I think it's about the same.
And I guess, does it matter then if there's 1,000 independent miners versus one large organization running it?
I think Zcash can protect its users and provide good service to its users it can prevent the miners or the stakers or the validators from surveilling or exploiting its users, regardless of what kind of organization or how many organizations they are. Okay, thanks, y'all.
Thank you.